welcome to the Hop Nation podcast. I'm very excited to have Johnathan Grzybowski from Camden, New Jersey with us today. He's the CEO for Penji, and today we'll be talking to him about his founder's story and a bit of the company and some unique details around that, and in particular around the theme of community. So welcome today, Johnathan.
It's an honor to be here. Excited to bring as much value to the audience as much as possible.
Well, thank you. So I always like to begin by getting people's kind of motivation for being in business, in the business you're in, and that founder's story. And I mean, you've been called a rogue entrepreneur and a serial entrepreneur. Tell us a bit of your founder's story.
Yeah, I used to work in corporate America, so to speak, very similar to a lot of other stories. But for me, what led me to where I am today is the desire to constantly be curious and to explore and take risks. I had a job that I worked at, and I didn't like it. I knew what I had to do in order to move on to the next level, but I was afraid to do it. And I took the leap of faith. I did what everything and everybody told me not to do because I knew what was right and what was best for me at the time. Fast forward, a lot of trial, error, success, failure, more failure than success. Stumbled across an agency where we helped organizations with their website and their app development, their marketing and things of that nature. And one of the hardest things that we found when running this agency was that design was the hardest thing for people to find quality talent. So we were bad at a lot of things. We were bad at organization. When we were an agency, we were bad at organization. We were bad at selling. We were bad at, the communication between the customer. We were just like, we weren't a refined machine, so to speak. We had a service, we did the service, we washed our hands once we did the service, and we were done. And that's not, as you would probably know, that is not high performance at all. That is the most mediocrity of performances that one could obtain. And so the one thing that people always told us that we were really good at was our graphic design. And we knew that we were good at it, and we knew that it was extremely difficult to find graphic design because it took us 5 years in order to find quality graphic designers. And my background is more sales driven and marketing. However, I was doing a large majority of designs for the better half of 4 + 5 years. And if I were to draw my talent on a piece of paper of how good I am at graphic design, it would be the most grotesque stick figure that you would ever see in your entire life. I am terrible at graphic design, but I do have a creative eye. And so we thought to ourselves, well, we're really good at design, and a lot of other people are having trouble with finding graphic designers. What if we could help other people with that? And that was the kind of the creation behind Penji, in addition to many other things, aha moments for sure. But that was kind of like the initial step for me to say, this is exactly what we need in order to move the company, in order to just help other people. And I think that's like the key. And we can get into the community aspect, but now more so than ever before, we're helping people with a problem that they have in their business, which is graphic design. And we can go on from here, but it's inspiring for me being a co-founder of a company and now being able to genuinely help people versus just providing a service and not being able to really deliver much value at all.
Well, I love it. Just in your founder's story, there is a number of concepts. So I'm going to try and capture some of the ones that jumped out to me. Mm-hmm. One was, you did it from a place of vulnerability. I loved how you talked about there's a lot of failures. There's a lot of things you weren't good at, but it was that grit and growth mindset, that are two core principles and concepts in the work I do. So you clearly demonstrate you have to persevere through the struggles, and then playing to your strengths while being aware of the weaknesses. But what's interesting about your story is in doing all of that, you found a very distinctive need that served the clients you serve. So talk about how when you made this discovery and, who were the clients you were dealing with, and how once you figured out what you were good at, where the gap was, how you were able to bring that together into the successful company you're now running.
Yeah. Well, I think the key word that you said was grit. I say that word constantly over and over and over again. I think we are a very gritty company. We're a company that's not necessarily afraid to get our hands dirty. In terms of the clients that we had, these businesses were a lot of like universities. They were Fortune type companies, Inc. type companies, and then small businesses as well. And there's nothing against these types of businesses, but when you're working with multinational organizations, you're not necessarily helping the people who are on the ground actually, providing the service or doing the needs for the company in order to grow. We're providing a very high levels website design that is probably being used by general masses, but it's not making a direct impact through society, the world, et cetera. And so we said to ourselves, well, what can we do in order to help more people? And so our focus on more so helping others and providing a valuable solution versus chasing the dollar, I think was the fundamental shift for us in order to think about more of like a long-term strategy versus like a short-term gain, because we can constantly think about, and it's so easy to chase the dollar because the dollar is dangling right in front of you. But if you take the dollar, you're only going to have the dollar. But if you were to just wait and hold off, even as tempting as it is, and focus more so on how to better service the people around you and better service your community, better service your customer base, et cetera, it's going to bring you more long-term success. And I can give you a couple examples if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
So the first one is what we do for our community. So we have we started a program called Penji Unlimited, where we offer our services to select nonprofits throughout the course of the year for $1 a month. Now, our services are somewhere between $349 to $698, and it depends upon the different tier that you want for your business. And we offer unlimited graphic design, so there's no limit to how many that people can actually do. You could do one design, or you could do 10 designs. Or you could do 100 designs. Doesn't mean we're going to get them all done, but we're going to try. Now, the first aspect of it is, well, what can we do locally? How can we help our community? We offered our services to, again, select nonprofits for $1 a month. And we do that every year. We kind of have like a cohort every year where we offer the service to a number of people. And it's our way of giving back to our local community and living our core values and our mission, which is helping those who help others. And
yes.
In addition to that, we also have other initiatives that we're planning on in the future to help a more widespread audience, but we're targeting and creating things that are specific to the people that are going to use it. So we've reached out to startups, we've reached out to nonprofits and agencies and marketing teams, and we've created things specifically for these types of people. Now, we're an online-based business, so we have to have these services and these features, but the idea of being curious and constantly talking to these people, in addition to trying to do good, is kind of like how we're shaping the company.
I love it. And, that statement that not just chasing the almighty dollar, but, this purposeful goal striving and contribution, and it's beyond just you and your company. The company, if you're doing the right things, you're rewarded. And the minute you go beyond yourself is cool. So talk about purpose to you and, where you're at in life and in business. What role does purpose and meaningfulness play in your business?
It's God, like purpose and meaning. I'm not like the most religious person in the world, but I think purpose and meaning is like our Bible. It's the thing that we constantly think about. And that's not necessarily just on like a business level, but it's more so on like a psychological level. If I were to die tomorrow, what would be my contribution? Who would be there to bury me into the ground? What would be the legacy that I hold? And that's something that I've had to ask myself, and I've gone into extremely dark places in order for me to get to that point. And also from a business perspective. So to the people who are listening, you might think to yourself like, oh, this guy talking right now sounds like he knows what he's doing. In actuality, I really don't. But at the same time, I know myself. And I've gone into so many conversations of just looking myself in the mirror and being like, what the F do you stand for? Who are you? Why are you here on this earth? And listen, I will lie to you and say that the dollar isn't something that I do think about, but at the same time, I do think about helping others first. Because if I'm able to help somebody else, even if it's something like a conversation that we're having now, and maybe it's one person that's listening, then I did my job. My core fundamental value is that I want to help entrepreneurs execute their vision to profitability. And so these are things like taglines that you've heard throughout this entire conversation. These aren't things that were just made up in a day. Like I've had to really think about like, okay, what am I doing without even noticing that I'm doing? So like I started a podcast to help entrepreneurs. I've gone and I've I've spoken in front of universities and things like that to kind of help students. And I kind of look at and I survey everything. I'm like, well, what is my core value as a person? Because it could be different from the company, right? It very much so could be different from our company. So what is my core value? And I want to help people not make the same mistakes that I made. And so rather than effing up for 7 years and finally getting at least something right, maybe they can listen to a couple of words that we say, or maybe they can follow the journey of Penji and they can say, oh, you know what? This is how they're doing it. I think I could do it a little bit better. And now it cuts the time down to about 1 week or a year versus 7 years of stress and struggle. So that's my core value. So, I mean, it's a great question, but it's something I'm constantly thinking about and I'm still refining. It's not good. It's okay. It's passable, Perfect. But it's definitely something that I know that's going to get even stronger as I continue to grow as a human being.
I love it. And my first book was called Epitaph Theory, and it was based on the speech that I won a national speech competition. Mm-hmm. And it's that whole idea of looking at the purpose, from this concept of, looking at your life, like you're writing your own epitaph and how do you want to be remembered? And it's not so much from that pride ego standpoint of legacy and being remembered. It's, when you're gone, what do you want people saying about you? And I love that you're tied to that purpose and that, because it's obviously a core tenet to me. And I went, that speech was developed. The topic for the speech was actually integrity in business. And within, weeks or a month of getting the topic, my father got diagnosed with terminal cancer. So it was very clear kind of end of life conversation and what's important. Mm. And that's how, that was developed. One question I like to ask some of the guests, and actually before I do that, one of the things you talked about was a concept that Shannon Graham, who was a previous guest on the show, talked about this. Rather than measuring ROI in business as return on investment, he talks about ripple of impact. Mm-hmm. And what you're doing with Penji is very much tied to this ripple of impact. So knowing that and hearing a bit about how purpose is so tied to you as a person as well as the company, imagine yourself at your 100th birthday celebration and you have a room full of people, that are celebrating with you. Who do you want there? And what would you want them saying about you at that point in your life?
Yeah. I mean, it's weird. We kind of had a conversation. I kind of had a similar conversation with my co-founder about it yesterday. While we were I was just randomly driving in a car together, and I definitely would like people to think like, wow, he was able to obtain all of this and help this many people. In terms of the people that I would like there, I don't even know if I would like to know them, all of them, but I would like them to at least, I would like the people there to at least receive some type of positive thing from the work that I've been able to do. And it's not necessarily having to be a thankful, like they don't have to pay respect to me per se, but I would like them to at least all be there and have the opportunity to connect with one another. I think that's important to me. My life, I don't, whether people remember me, sure, I definitely want the close people to remember me, but I would rather have people be able to receive the things, the fruits of our labor. I mean, there's 30 plus people sitting in another room where they're working their butts off. And so just as much as I'm working mine. So it's just like, I think it's a good question. It's definitely something I don't have a good answer for yet, but it's definitely things I have thought about.
Well, it's interesting because you did have a good answer. And one thing I picked up is, the sharing of stories amongst each other rather than giving like a eulogy at a 100th birthday celebration. It's people talking and connecting to each other, and how
it wouldn't be somber, that's for sure.
It would be how they were all touched and the impact factor. And then, maybe through connecting with each other, they then ripple out themselves. So
I would say it'd definitely be a party.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't want something somber. It's like, I hate, I mean, who likes going to funerals? But like, funerals should be a celebration of life, not necessarily, a remembrance of what they did. I mean, we've all been impacted. I'm sure I'm not knowing your entire situation with your family, but I'm sure there's always things. My mom has cancer as well currently, and I've always thought like, well, what's going on? What happens if and when? And I was just thinking to myself, there's so many stories that I have that some people don't even know, and I think it's their right to know if I so choose to explain it. So, I think that's the fun part of life and the celebration of life.
Absolutely. Now, in your bio and description, it talks about being a serial entrepreneur. You're currently, riding this awesome wave through Penji, and, it's still in its infancy as far as companies and lifespan go.
Sure.
Is there something else after Penji that you'd like to do, even if you're hanging on and still doing stuff with Penji?
Yeah, I think Penji is just the first bit of slew of tools in the toolbox. There are a lot of things that we know that can help entrepreneurs. And another thing that I can say, I can't talk about the other stuff, but I can say about one thing that in particular that I am a fan of, and that's health and wellness. And so for me, I call myself and my girlfriend, we kind of coined the terms bad vegans. And so every time, and this kind of goes to peak performance, right? Like high performance.
I love it.
So I've realized that when I eat meat, so I'm 6'2", around 190, teetering 200 pounds. And I've used to think that this world that I live in, that the only way that I can get more muscle is if I were to eat meat, right? And I'm not going to sit here and say that like you should be vegan or vegetarian or whatever. I think everything that you do should be in moderation. And whatever the next venture would be, in addition to the things I can't talk about, because we do have a lot of things I wish I could talk about, but it's just like, it's not there yet. The one thing I can do is educating more people about more of a healthy living and living a more optimal life and outputting more. Because I think if you can understand the food and the diet and what you eat and what you put into your body is your engine, so to speak. And you need to be able to, you need to fill it up with the proper nutrients and fuel in order to run properly. And I've seen a considerable difference in my life by switching from a heavy meat bro type of diet to a more, I would say like a barbarian type of diet where I don't eat meat. I only eat meat when it's kind of like thrown at me, and I'm not going to go out of my way in order to grab it. So what does that mean exactly? I'm not going to go to a grocery store and cook chicken, right? Or I'm not going to cook beef. But if it's there and it's on a menu and I'm at a restaurant, and it happens to have chicken or whatever, I'll eat it. But I'm going to not eat it as much as I once did. And
you're making conscious choices to avoid it.
Yeah.
When you are in the power and position of control to do so.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just think more people should consider it, especially entrepreneurs, because the optimal performance, the peak performance, I think truly comes down to what you're putting into your body. I don't drink coffee, and I'm constantly like energetic. Now that could just be my chemical, imbalance or balance, who knows? But I would say that it has a lot to do with what I'm doing in my life in order to fuel me, in order to be a better person.
Right. So diet, we heard, is majorly important to your own performance, success, and energy. I mean, people talk about time management, but really what we're talking about at the end of the day is energy management and priority planning.
Yeah.
It's energy management, priority planning.
Yeah, absolutely. Priority planning is key. I mean, I'm sure you can go on for hours about that with what you teach your clients and everything else like that. But holy crap, you don't realize how not important things are until you put it all on like a table or something like that, and you look at all the crap that you're doing on a daily basis, because you could probably cut out 99.9% of the things that are on your current to-do list.
Absolutely. And when kind of caca hits the fan, or tragedy strikes, like things you have on your calendar and thought were priorities come off real quick.
Yeah, totally.
And you shift. And nothing, very, very rarely does anything become catastrophic at those times. You
100%.
come back and you might have one day of suckfest of catch up and admin, but really after that, things are back to normal. And, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's not only interesting, but just the idea of, I think one of the hardest things to do is like when stuff does hit the fan, are you able to go back to that thing that you did? Because 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to forget because you're just like focused on that one thing. So like, to kind of give another tidbit, I use Google, Apple reminders. And so anytime that I have anything, you can use any app really, but it could be like as simple as like, hey, have to go get like flowers for significant other, or like my girlfriend, or like my mom, or something like that. As soon as I come up with the idea, it goes right into my calendar. Or I have to get eggs. Okay, boom, goes, or not in the calendar, goes into the reminders. Like it could be as small as that, or as big as like I need to complete an email newsletter chain of emails and workflow, whatever it is. That's the key. Not being able to forget. Planning it is one thing, but not being able to forget all the things that you are on your to-do list, I think is another.
Absolutely. I love it. Love it. So in the last little bit of time we have here today, what are some of your favorite, or maybe not favorite success practices, but also influences in your life that have brought you to where you're at?
I wish the influences was stronger than what I have in my life. And we can argue maybe that's my fault. I don't know. But I think I'm more of like a self-motivated individual, and I live a lot by my own trial by fire systems. And I also use a lot of feedback from our current team and my co-founders. I think that's incredibly important. I mean, I think just finding somebody to hold myself accountable, and hearing things that I probably don't want to hear. but just being man enough to look at myself in the mirror and be like, yeah, like you're screwed up. You're not doing this right. But I think I had an epiphany a couple of weeks ago where I realized that I'm not thinking ahead. Right. So I used to live very much so in the present. Right. And I would think to myself, okay, I need to get this done today and that done today and this done. And now I'm thinking at least a month in advance. Right. And I could, at times on certain things, I could be living 6 months in advance or 2, whatever. But I think the idea of not living in the exact moment and doing all the things off your to-do list or catching up, what you said, having a catch-up day, maybe it's a catch-up week, I don't know, but finding a way to just prepare yourself so far in advance where it's like February now, but maybe you're thinking February 2020, where you're that far in advance. Like I would go as far as saying, do it as far away as you possibly can. And I think that level of future thinking is going to be a pivotal point of your success. And it takes a lot of time, but it works. It works.
Well, it's interesting because yesterday, one of my clients, is enjoying tremendous business success, is now completely financially free. Nice. And he's a young guy, he's still in the 30s, so that's quite remarkable. But he talked about wanting breathing room. You can get so busy, and I have been guilty of this, still guilty at times, in terms of being just busy and doing so much stuff and putting too much on the plate, and going back to that energy management, priority planning, being able to create breathing room, right? Because that's what actually charges you up, between sleep, the research is showing is the number one driver of performance. Number one. Yeah. And the second would be, being able to create that breathing room, which is that rest in between, so you can recharge kind of in micro moments as well as those macros. And I remember way back in the day, doing some scheduling where looking at the year. So the yearly planning was, okay, how many, holidays do I want? How many days off a week? How many hours a day? Starting there, and then planning out, okay, what's the financial target with what's left and what can be done in that time? Because a lot of times what we do is we figure out, this is what has to be done, and whatever's left is our time for holidays or breaks.
I think it goes back to your core. It goes back to your values, right? Or it goes back to your goals. Some people, I'll be honest, I haven't really thought too much about a break, and I haven't thought too much about vacation and things like that. And for me, I want to have a higher purpose and a higher level of like life. That doesn't mean that holidays and things like that won't happen. And it doesn't mean that I don't want them. I definitely do, but I'll be honest, I haven't really thought too much about it. But if that's the type of lifestyle that you want, I think exactly what you said is like the key thing. But you won't even be able to physically and mentally be able to get there unless you're able to understand what are the things that you want and what your dreams are and what your goals are.
Right. And I think we all recharge different ways.
Yes.
For you, it might be
100%
adding on doing the community work, because it's in that work, the other work might be what pays the bills and keeps everyone happy. And it's that community work that is really the breathing room and the recharging rejuvenation.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I also play a ton of video games too. So,
there you go.
Yeah. I'm not going to sit here and be perfect. I love working out. I love eating good food. I love drinking wine. I can have a whole nother podcast about talking wine if you ever are interested. But I play video games too. I mean, right now I'm obsessed with Apex Legends. Don't know if you know the game, but it's like the best game ever made. And, I mean, you got to be able to, like you said, you got to have that time to recharge the batteries regardless of what it is. But it has to work for you.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I love it.
What type of, you said you like wine? What type of wine do you like?
Well, red.
Not to put you on the spot.
I like red wine.
Okay.
You know, I'm having to have a lot less. I don't know. I've had some health stuff and we're trying to figure out stuff because I was getting more headaches, and I mean off of a glass of wine, which, you know, I'm not talking bottles, but in October, so I'm getting that kind of dialed in. But in October, I was in the country of Georgia.
Interesting.
And over there, found out their winemaking goes back, I think, over 8,000 years. Yeah. It's the oldest place in the world and the birthplace of wine, and had some of the best wine I've ever had. And here in the Okanagan Valley, we have, you know, some award-winning wines and that around Kelowna and that, and it's fantastic. You know,
that's awesome. So I don't know exactly where you're located, but like, you know, you have Niagara too.
Absolutely. And the Appalachian Valley in Canada. I'm West Coast. I'm just north of Vancouver.
Okay. Got it.
So yeah, we're in lake country here.
Okay. I hear you. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. Again, wine's a huge thing for me. I love exploring new, cause it's the one time that, like, even though you may not be able to travel, but it's that one thing that you could do where it allows you to go to a different country, even just by going to the bottle, you know?
Yeah.
You can be in Canada, you can be in Italy, you can be in Georgia if you really wanted to.
Yeah. And there's a social side to it. Not only that, there's health benefits. You know, there's a lot of science around.
I tell myself about that every time I drink.
Yeah.
It's for health benefit.
Yeah, up to a point, and then it has a law of diminishing effect.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course.
And subsequent behaviors.
Yeah, they got that right.
Yeah, been there, done that. Bought the t-shirt. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for your time today, Johnathan. You know, it's an inspirational story, and love what you're doing. I invite the businesses and people listening to this podcast, check out Penji and the work. You know, what's beautiful about that model is a cap cost. You have these needs, and, you know, depending on where you're at in terms of scale of your business, there's lots of different options, and you're giving business to a team of people who are doing great things in their community. And, you know, money's just a tool to make good things or bad things happen. They're making good things happen with this. So I encourage you to check out Johnathan and Penji, and love to get a link and check out some of your podcasts. And, you know, if you ever want to riff on some of the stuff we talked about, you know, and have me on your podcast, love to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. We welcome that. Anytime that people are able to share our story, we always want to reciprocate and help them. But also we always love talking to good people. So, you know, would absolutely appreciate that. And I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Have a great day. And thank you, listeners, for listening to the Hop Nation podcast.